Justice came too late. The Robbie Middleton case. June 28, 1998. Bobby and Colleen Middleton heard a commotion outside. When they went outside, they found a crowd of onlookers in the middle of the street. Something terrible had happened. When Colleen got closer, she saw a badly burned man lying on the ground. He smelled like burnt flesh, and at first glance, he didn't look like he had a scratch on him. Of course, the woman was horrified by what she saw, but soon her eyes fell on the only surviving item on the victim: red sneakers. And here Colleen recoiled, hoping that all this was a dream. After all, these were sneakers of her little son Robbie, who turned 8 on this day. Robbie Middleton was born on June 28, 1990, in the small village of Splendora, now a city, Texas, to Bobby and Colleen Middleton. From childhood, the boy was very active and intelligent. He adored animals and his family, and together with his older sister Heather, Robbie loved to build huts and play in the forest. Therefore, the child's favorite hobby was camping. On his 8th birthday, Robbie asked his parents to buy him his own tent. Early in the morning on June 28, the child woke up and ran to get his gift. His mother helped him set up the tent in the backyard, and Robbie decided to invite his best friend to spend the night in the tent on his birthday. Colleen was happy to join him. It's worth noting that Splendora was a small village where everyone knew each other. Parents were happy to let their children go out alone or with friends from an early age. So that morning, Robbie took out his savings and decided to go to a fireworks store. The boy told his mother that after the store, he would go for a walk in the woods near their house with a friend. And Colleen allowed it. Why not let the child have some fun before the holiday? To everyone's horror, less than an hour later, the parents found their son lying on the pavement, completely burned. Robbie was barely breathing, and his body was covered in huge blisters. The ambulance arrived quickly, and the child was taken to a small hospital in Houston. When Robbie was examined, it was discovered that he had suffered burns to 99% of his body. The only unburned part was a small fragment of skin on his right leg. You'll agree that 99% of burns predict an early death in most cases. But Robbie clung to life. The doctors quickly responded and transferred the boy to a major medical burn center, where the child was literally pulled back from the brink of death. Despite the fact that the favorable forecast was negligible, Robbie survived. And while the boy was recovering, the police considered 2 versions of what happened. Either Robbie had an accident, or someone deliberately set fire to the child. Soon Robbie, despite the pain, was able to tell us that he was walking through a park that day when he was suddenly grabbed by the arm by his neighbor, 13-year-old Donald Collins. Robbie turned around, and at that moment, something burning was splashed in his eyes. The boy began to scream in pain and tried to wipe his eyes, but in response, he received several blows to the head. A short time later, Robbie felt himself being dragged somewhere. Robbie recalled that he was then pushed against a tree and tied up. The boy could not open his eyes to see the attackers, but he was sure that Donald was not alone, as he heard the laughter of at least one other person, Uncle Donald. After Robbie was tied to the tree, the attackers poured gasoline on him, set him on fire, and ran away. The child began to scream in excruciating pain. His arms and legs were not responding to him, but soon the rope burned out, and Robbie was able to free himself. The child was unable to open his eyes, so he ran only on instinct. Robbie managed to run for a few minutes, burning like a ball of fire. When he reached his street, he collapsed near his house and lost consciousness from the pain. A week after the incident, 13-year-old Donald Collins was arrested, but already in 2000, the criminal case against him was suspended. The reason for this was that the investigation did not find any evidence of his guilt or the presence of a motive. Detectives hoped that when Robbie recovered and it became easier for him to talk, he would be able to give them more information about what happened. The years passed. Robbie Middleton underwent more than 150 skin replacement surgeries, which were grown in a laboratory. Day after day, the boy showed the world that he was not ready to leave yet. His family and friends supported him in everything. Sometimes Robbie would ask his mom about heaven and hell. The child was worried that he might not get to heaven, and Colleen Middleton assured him every time that his soul was pure and he had nothing to go to hell for. But there was confusion in the boy's soul. He was hiding a terrible secret which he was not ready to share for many years. In 2011, after almost 13 years of fighting for life, Robbie Middleton died from squamous cell skin cancer. Oncology ate up the young guy in just a few months. But before he left our world, Robbie dared to record a video in the presence of a lawyer where he told about what tormented him all these years. The beginning of June was hot in Splendora, Texas. 7-year-old Robbie was looking forward to his upcoming birthday and wondering if his parents would give him a tent. One day, as he was returning from a walk with a friend in the park, he was suddenly approached by a neighbor boy named Donald. Robbie's mother had warned him to stay away from the bully neighbor, but the child was kind and naive. Don, as his family called him, called Robbie over to show him something interesting. Within seconds, he pushed the child to the ground, pulled down his pants, and sexually assaulted him. Little Robbie couldn't fight back against this beast, so he just pulled up his pants and looked at his neighbor with eyes full of resentment. Donald smirked and told Robbie that he had just raped him. He sternly forbade him from telling anyone, otherwise he threatened to kill him. Robbie wouldn't have told anyone anyway, as his family was deeply religious. He believed that he would go to hell for what had happened. He felt guilty for what had occurred. So the child gathered all his strength and entered the house as if nothing had happened. The parents did not notice any changes in their son. Therefore, after a short period of time, the child returned to his usual life, burying this tragedy within himself. However, on his birthday, Donald decided to get rid of the boy in order to silence him forever. He followed Robbie, grabbed him, and sprayed him in the eyes with a spray can. He then tied him to a tree and set him on fire. All of this was revealed by a 20-year-old man on his deathbed, causing shock among his family and friends, who had been unaware of what had happened all these years. After Robbie's death, the cause of death was determined to be murder. This was made possible by the young man's willingness to shed light on the perpetrator's motive. Donald Wilburn Collins himself was born in 1985. His mother passed away when he was 8 years old. His father was a troubled individual who used illegal substances. However, this did not prevent him from gaining full custody of the boy. It is unclear whether there was any abuse involved, but Don has always denied any such claims. A couple of years later, the boy's father was imprisoned. Donald began to walk around numerous relatives. He managed to stay only with his uncle, Rex, and his wife. The boy began to live in the village of Splendora, where he quickly earned a reputation as a cruel bully. The villagers said that Donald allowed himself to torture animals, to mock young children and the elderly. Therefore, many parents forbade their children to communicate with him. In 2001, 16-year-old Donald was sentenced to 4 years in prison for sexually assaulting another 8-year-old boy. And already in 2007, he was again sentenced to a short term for theft and resistance to law enforcement officers. After his release, Donald was required to register with the sex offender registry. However, he refused to do so, resulting in another short sentence. And finally, in 2011, after the video Robbie Middleton is already an adult, Donald Collins was rearrested. The investigation did a lot of work, interviewing many residents of the village. And Robbie's peers said that Don did not even hide the fact that he was the one who set fire to little Robbie and intimidated them with a similar fate. There was also another victim of Collins' abuse, and this guy said that Donald had promised to burn him, just like he had done with Robbie. Heather Marie White, who was the stepdaughter of a cousin, also helped the case a lot in Donald. The girl said that Don confessed to her about the massacre of Robbie. However, she also told me that Uncle Rex was in it too, but as a result, the man did not bear any responsibility. The investigation failed to prove his involvement, and he denied everything to the last. On February 9, 2015, 29-year-old Donald Collins was sentenced to 40 years in prison. His lawyers immediately appealed the verdict. However, on March 29, 2017, the appeal was rejected. As of now, the monster is still behind bars. The Middleton family won a compensation lawsuit in December 2011. They were awarded $150 billion. Yes, you didn't hear wrong. $150 billion, the largest compensation in U.S. history. But of course, no one ever saw the money. Robbie's parents didn't receive a single cent. But the fact that justice prevailed brought peace to their family.